Hey everyone, I'm Kyle from the Secure and Defend UX team, and today I have a really boring presentation for you. It's one that's predicated on our iteration value, which aims to make things as small as possible and get out the door as quickly as we can. So given that, I wanted to use the time today to highlight some of those boring iterative solutions that we're getting out there. But first, let's talk about why boring solutions are so important. Well, first, it's an asymmetrical nature of approach that systematically provides improvements. These are essentially low-cost experiments that migrate our hypothesis to real-life volatility, that is, being in the wild. Since we're often designing under opacity, tinkering and small experiments are an ideal offense to uncertainty, improving decision-making, and managing risk. The strategy promotes continual risk-taking, which we do every day, but in smaller doses. This decreases the risk exposure versus high-risk exposure and costly endeavors that include many different teams. And so that's time, cost, and even for bigger solutions, it makes the feedback signal a little bit more fuzzy because there's just so much more to get feedback on. Okay, so the notable design trade-off is it ain't always pretty, and usually it's glued together with a bunch of bubble gum and duct tape, but having small experiments exist in the wild versus being discussed in an issue is 100% greater chance of adoption, value, feedback, or anything because it exists. What are some roadblocks to boring solutions? Well, the first is grand solutions, the opposite of boring solutions, the sort of arch nemesis. These solutions often cover many small things, but can block the shipping of small improvements because the dependency on the big issue shipping and challenges getting planned. Therefore, everything is slowed down and the subsequent or even alternative small solutions have to be planned around this. Another one is the law of triviality, also known as the bike shed effect. And this highlights the phenomenon of trivial issues receiving disproportionate attention versus big complex ones. It's an interesting one, I would check it out. But if boring solutions fall under this spell, it breaks our strategic approach of small iterative solutions. That's value stream that keeps going. And of course, the last one, or one that I thought of, is the ever elusive search for perfection. If anyone saw the amazing presentation by Taylor about imposter syndrome at Virtual Contribute, they'll know, like, he spoke to all the vampires that fall under that category. They're all blockers for small solutions. All right, well, let's take a look at some of these that we've been working on in the Secure and Defend team. And if we see you out there yawning and looking at Slack, or if you just want to take a nap, you know what? I won't be offended. Actually, to the contrary, we'll be complimented by it. All right, so let's start with the dependency list. The problem here is the list of components shown in this particular UI may not be up to date, as it might not reflect the head of the default branch, the latest job. So users should be aware that they might be looking at old data here, possibly outdated versions of the project's components. And nowhere on the screen is it even explicit when or where the data is coming from. We're just looking at a bunch of components. The small iteration that we did here is we linked it to documentation just to help developers across the project understand what they're seeing here. We added subtext that frames the page, findings based on latest, and there's a new update, a small solution to that that's not here, that says latest successful pipeline, which is just a better copywriting there. And it links to the pipeline page so they can go directly to it and when it was last updated 2 days ago. Now, the next step here, though, is we need to explicitly warn when a dependency scan job failed. So that's also something that Rebecca on our team's taking a look at, doing on the security dashboard, and just being explicit about when the job failed, because the dashboard is in the same boat as this. And if there's a job failure, the data that we may be looking at may be out of date. Sticking with the dependency list, the top priority that we have for this page as it relates to our features is this job to be done here. And basically what that is we want to display vulnerabilities that relate to our dependencies. So looking at this UI, there are no vulnerabilities displayed. And at first glance, it's difficult to see any because there are none. And they're hidden in time behind this tab, vulnerable components. Also, we have a status column here, and this is not accurate. It's redundant, and it's saying that there's not a vulnerability found, but what we really want to say is when vulnerabilities are found. So 95% of the 3,000 components here don't have vulnerabilities. So safe is basically clutter and actually causing more confusion. Okay, so what are the small iterations that we did to clean some of this up? The first one is we removed the vulnerability tab, which was hiding vulnerabilities in time. We have a sort order here, which we defaulted to severity, which already existed. We just defaulted to it. And that brought the vulnerabilities, and it displayed them in space, and it made them prominent. That's the first thing you see on the page. We removed the safe status, and therefore we're only calling attention to the actual dependencies that have vulnerabilities, and we applied this risk label. This is also a risk label that we applied to the license list as well for out of policy licenses. And then just a small fix here is we brought the component name and the version column together. We merged them together, and it just tightens up the readability of this, because we'll be likely adding some new things to the dependency list here. So tightening it up where we can certainly helps us out. What are some next steps that we want to do with dependency lists? Well, right now we're looking at an expanded view, which does show vulnerabilities to a related component. However, they're not linkable yet. Now, this is dependent on the upcoming objects page, which is a dedicated page to vulnerabilities. So users can have discussions around vulnerabilities, sort of similar to an issues page, but it's not. There's a distinction there. You can apply statuses to the objects page, you can create issues around it, but that is dependent on the completion of that. Then we'll be able to link these. So they'll be one step forward. The second thing we want to do on dependency lists that we're looking at is we want to help users understand where and how these dependencies affect the project. Now we're just kind of giving them a list. Hey, here are some ones that our scanning has says that there's vulnerabilities, but it's not as simple as just, you can't just go in there and remove a dependency. You need to help the user understand where these dependencies live amongst each other and how it's affecting their project. And then the third is better unifying the license list with license compliance, better unifying the dependency list with license compliance. Two separate features, two separate scanners, but there shouldn't be two separate user interfaces for that. We can merge them together better. Okay, so moving on to the security dashboard. Very exciting here about this development. Okay, here's the context. GitLab projects can have multiple containers, but the container scanning could only scan one. This will not be the case anymore. We will be able to scan multiple containers. Now this creates, that's a wonderful advancement. The next problem though, in terms of UX, is the same vulnerability type may be found across multiple images. This would result in multiple objects, the same type, different images, and this is kind of confusing. So the first iteration we had here is leveraging the existing filtering pattern that we have there, and the user can now select the specific image. Not perfect, but they can dig down and start dealing with those vulnerabilities individually per image. Now, the next steps we want to do here, though, is simplifying remediation across different images. And there's a lot of UX actually parallels to what we're looking at with our scanner integrations as well. That's something Camila has been looking at. And in fact, you may recall one of the previous showcases where it was grouping. This was along the same lines, and that will help the remediation process for these multiple same vulnerabilities. So again, same vulnerabilities, different images, there could be a better way to address all of them together instead of one by one by one. And also recently, we've been working with the package team to bake security into the container registry. So thank you, Ian, for hosting such a great Think Big session. And what we want to do there is with these different images is when there's vulnerabilities, we want to bring that into the workflow that you see in the package registry UI. Or even more fundamental, what if containers aren't even being scanned? So that's something where we have some designs out there for, and that's actually the first step, is making sure that they're configured correctly. Okay, sticking with the security dashboard. This is our upcoming suggested solution feature. This is really exciting because for container scanning and dependency scanning, we do have a database or times where versions need to be updated or vulnerabilities have known patches, and we'll be creating merge requests automatically for users to then review and to just merge. So this takes the one step out of the process where they actually have to manually do this. Now, the problem to solve here is, as we roll this feature out, is the users need to be aware of these merge requests. But we want to do awareness without too much noise. And, you know, we definitely heard from other products that there was a lot of noise with this and email and different things. But as the first iteration for our awareness, we are leveraging a notification banner here. And it's going to be, like I said, in the security dashboard. And the upside here is that it promotes learnability and it's visible, but it has low noise. And then the flow here is when they do view security fixes, they'll go to the merge request list with a pre-filtered label of the feed, which is assigned to all these auto-created merge requests, the GitLab suggested solution label. So there's a great learnability aspect to that. The next steps we want to do here is how we're surfacing messaging in general. We don't want to rely on banners. We have other messages that we want to show. We don't want to have like a banner frenzy here. And the team is auditing all these different messages. Again, another one is like pipelines failing and so on. There's a number of different messages, and we want to better sort of have a more centralized message for this. Okay, jumping to license compliance. This feature is where this is related to our license scan, and users can add policies to deny certain licenses that are out of compliance with their organization. We're looking at a merge request and as a maintainer view. When we're looking at this view, we see in the merge request widget that 2 licenses were detected. And then I'm taking a look at this and I don't really know what this means, this X icon and this circle icon. When in reality, the X icon means that it's denied, it's out of compliance. The circle icon means that it has no classification. The user would actually have to click this to look at the modal. So the UI is not explicit about the problem, nor about the suggested resolution. And then even though an out of compliance license has been detected, the merge request may be merged. That's something else we're taking care of in the next milestone as well. Deny will mean deny, and it'll disallow merge requests. We still have the approval rules that can override those denials, but as you can see as a maintainer, they can still merge this even though a denied license has been committed. So what's the small iteration that we did here? Well, we put text in the widget section here to specify that a policy violation is in there. And then we brought out the categories with the header here, denied, and then said explicitly what this means. It's out of compliance with the project's policies and should be removed. So the developer knows what to do next and why the merge request cannot be merged. In that same vein on security reports, and we're still looking at the merge request, in this widget, we're looking at reports from SaaS and dependency scanning. It looks like we have some vulnerabilities detected here. We're looking at that X icon again, and we have no idea what that means. And when it's fixed, there's a check icon. So this isn't, it's unclear what that means. It's unclear what we're looking at. And the other thing is we're already using those icons for license compliance. So, and they have different meanings than what we're communicating here. The meaning is explicit here, that these are newly detected in this merge request. So what we did is we just removed the clutter because they're actually causing more confusion than anything. And we just added a text header to make it more explicit. All right, that concludes the boring presentation. Thanks for staying awake, some of you. I greatly appreciate your time. You know, my final message here is a lot of small changes are not that small. In fact, the sum of the parts evolved to be one step forward. As a closing note, since I got you all here in the room and been so lucky to get to know many of you, I just want to say that it's a weird time and you're in my thoughts, and I hope you're well and finding ways to smile. Thank you.